Today, we're going to talk about the core issues that every plan must address. And welcome into the program. This is your game plan for retirement with Northwestern Ohio's resource for that common sense approach to planning, helping us to identify the risks, issues, and opportunities that we have with our money, with our investments, and those retirement accounts to help us secure a better, more confident financial and retirement future. He is president and founder of McIntire Retirement Services, Chris McIntire. And Chris, it is always a pleasure.
Hey, my pleasure to be with you. I'm in an extra good mood because the Red Wings have started off the year quite well. So for you hockey buffs out there, keep the faith.
Indeed, as have my Carolina Hurricanes, although we cannot say the same for my football team down this way, Chris. They are abysmal, and we are wearing brown paper bags to the games now.
Well, try living between Detroit and Cleveland for most of your adult life, and at least this year, a glimmer of hope, depending on where you fall on that. They're both doing decent anyway.
Indeed. Yes. Well, things turn around eventually, don't they?
Yeah, they have to, says the law of averages.
Sometimes those periods just seem to take forever. So, well, Chris, we want retirement to be a period of life where we get to enjoy things. No, retirement really is not what it used to be, kind of a postscript to a career. And when we wind down today, retirement can last decades, and people want to be more active and involved and doing the dream things that they have always wanted to do, but haven't had the time during their working career. And, by and large, we have built a more sizable personal net worth in order to do those things. But Chris, there are still so many questions and concerns on the minds of savers and investors and retirees. And today we're going to talk about the core issues that every plan must address. What strikes me about these 6 core issues is that several of these sort of take care of themselves during our working career, and we don't have to focus too much on them. And they may become the most important things during our retirement.
Yeah, that you're absolutely right. And Peter's referring to a list that we're sharing here, guys. So for those of you on the podcast, we've got some notes here. And the number one is, the 6 core issues every plan should address is my plan aligned with my goals? And I think that's a good thing to bring up, especially after all the volatility we had with stocks and bonds in 2022. And let's say 2023 as well. Bonds have been disappointing. And, and as interest rates have come up, right, there's some different avenues that we haven't been able to look at, like money markets, CDs, and things like that. So, your plan may still be aligned with your goals, but is it time to look at, hey, can we make some adjustments to our plan based off of changes in the economic landscape?
Yeah, indeed, Chris. 24 months ago, we were not seeing interest rates where they are right now. So even if we had a plan that was goal-oriented, that was aligned with goals and timelines, conditions in the world around us change, and conditions in our own situation can change. But certainly as of right now, compared to a year or 2 years ago, conditions in the interest rate environment have changed. Worth a second look at basically all of the holdings in our portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. We've gone from very low interest rates, cheap mortgages, all those, things that the cost of money was very inexpensive. And we could get car loans for 72 months at 0% interest. So people could load themselves up with debt. It didn't cost them anything. And the same with the federal government. Look at the federal deficit now north of $33 billion. And now I think what we're going to hear
trillion. Yeah, I know everybody knows what you're saying, but a few extra zeros on there makes a big difference in that number, right?
Man, it sure does. And, and especially with 10-year government bonds coming in at about 5% interest now, the amount of interest the government's going to be paying to service debt that they did not before is everything we spend other than defense. So Everything that we have spent previously will eventually be used to pay interest on our debt, other than the military. Think of that.
Very, very scary. And where does that put us for even on that defense, the national security side of things, because a large part of our national security is our financial stability and well-being. And ladies and gentlemen, your security personally has a lot to do with your financial confidence and well-being as well. And that's why I think this list, Chris, of the 6 core issues that every plan should address is a valuable resource. And ladies and gentlemen, want to remind you of 2 things. One, that if you would like this report or any of the reports that we have offered throughout the course of your game plan for retirement over the years, those resources are available to you. You can call, you can request, you can get them in your hands, and you can review them on your own time. So such as this list of the 6 core issues. Recently, we've covered 8 moments to move your money, the 9 critical risks that every plan should address, the 10 questions to answer to know if you are ready to retire. So all of these reports and resources that Chris McIntire has available. If you want to watch the episode to hear the discussions, or if you would like the list to go over on your own time, just give a call. 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194, and request those resources and those reports. All of them contain important, I would call it vital information for your planning efforts and strategies. Again, 800-868-1194, or you can skip the phone call and go online to McIntireRetirementServices.com, McIntireRetirementServices.com, and you can enter your information there and just leave in the message that you'd like the reports. So always available online. 800-868-1194 is the phone number, or McIntyre Retirement Services. And then the second, and maybe the most valuable component of this program, is that Chris is here providing education each and every week, but he also off air provides that education in an applicable way. Knowledge is power, but applied knowledge is true power. And Chris can help you apply the information, identify the right strategy, identify what risks and issues you may be facing, right along with you side by side on the same side of the table as you, to formulate that plan and put that plan in writing, bringing all of these core issues together and addressing each and every one of them in your planning process. So give a call, 800-868-1194. There is no cost, no obligation for that review, that strategy session, and to get your written plan in place. Again, that's 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. So sorry for my monologue there, Chris, but number 1 on the list, is my plan aligned with my goals? Is the plan specifically designed to address your specific goals? Is it in your best interest? What are your advisors or source of financial guidance philosophies? What experiences have shaped your approach to money and planning? How does your plan, your investments, and your advice reflect these goals? This is important to reflect on all of these questions. And this report shows these 6 big topics and then several questions to ask about each of them underneath.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's common in times like these, with the bond market being so volatile, that the conservative clients are like, should we even get more safer, as bond prices have come down? And, the unique piece on the bond side, Peter, here is not to make this an investment discussion. We've got other things we're going to talk about is, if you do own bonds and they're falling down in value, they are still paying the same interest rate as the day they did when they were issued. It's just the value of them have dropped. Okay. They will, as they get closer to maturity, come up in value to their par value or their face value. So, we would look into 2024 as bonds being a very potentially great investment, because never before in history have they been down for 3 consecutive years in a row.
I was going to mention, Chris, unprecedented poor performance for the bond, the fixed income side of the market. What has traditionally been considered the more conservative side. And while the market has over the past 2 years been much more volatile, so it has evened things out, the bonds, bond funds, the fixed income side has been a little bit more steady. We are seeing losses in that side, which is not what I think a lot of people envision for their bonds. But you make a great point. While the value goes down, the income that they are producing is an important factor to consider. And what goes up traditionally cycles back around, and maybe we're looking forward to a much better and more optimistic 2024 outlook.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those that are still putting money into investments, you're could be buying bonds at a very steep discount, and eventually you'll have the capital gains plus the interest. So a unique opportunity there is also, emblematic of what's been happening in the market. And, as we deal with the conflict in the Middle East here, traditionally U.S. government bonds have been more of the safer haven. And if that happens to get more widespread and whatnot, you may see that happen as well too. And, God forbid, we all pray for peace and don't want to see any more carnage of war for sure. But so let's we'll switch on here, Peter. Let's go hit number 2 here, and that's income.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We deal with, this show is typically marketed toward the retirees or people who are thinking of upcoming in retirement and want to talk about what's called a paradigm shift, okay, in the fact that, look, I've been working for 30 years, I'm still putting money into the market. I'm not really worried about income myself, but if I'm talking to somebody out there who's going to retire in the next, 18 months, or they're already retired listening to the show here today, is how do we derive income? Right now that we have a different interest rate environment, we certainly have different investments that we can look at. Bond yields or the payout that bonds are doing is increasing as interest rates have increased. Annuity payouts have essentially skyrocketed because a rising interest rate environment is very favorable to the insurance companies on annuity payouts. So, it's getting much easier to solve that income puzzle there, Peter.
I was talking with an individual recently, Chris, that had locked in an interest rate was with a 3-year commitment at 2.1%. And he was sort of kicking himself saying, oh, I've got these terrible interest rates. But if we look back, 2-3 years ago, that was a fantastic interest rate at the time. It's almost like hindsight being 20/20 or 50/50, according to Cam Newton. But I understand the sentiment there. But if we look back at the stock market, it's easy with hindsight to say, oh, well, we should have bought here. We should have sold here. And that's sort of what we're doing with this interest rate environment right now, second guessing past decisions. But we made decisions based on the information that we had at the time. And again, conditions have changed. That's why, Chris, this is a time where we need to reevaluate the whole makeup and the build of the portfolio. Even those positions that did serve their needs may be able to be improved, and especially here where it comes to number 2 of these 6 core issues on the income generation side.
Sure. Yeah. In a very low interest rate environment, you're going to be looking a lot more at like dividend paying stocks, utility companies, because you need to have a place to generate income. And some companies do pay out dividends. We call those, like an income stock, for example, Verizon, Walgreens, Huntington Bank, many companies pay good, healthy dividends. You have the growth stock, which would be more the Amazons and the Apples that aren't known for paying dividends out to shareholders. They're known for growing the value of the company and then hence the value of the stock price. Okay. And as we transition into a different bond environment, CD environment, annuity environment, we can certainly reallocate some of those dividends into different asset classes as well. And in a lot of cases, you're de-risking a portfolio also in utilizing some of those traditionally safer side of the investment aspect in the landscape, I meant to say.
Well, Chris, this is one area, again, kind of circling back at the beginning of the program. I mentioned that these 6 core issues that every plan must address during our working career, a lot of these sort of take care of themselves. We don't necessarily have to plan. Number 2, income. We have to have a job, right? It is our employment and our paycheck takes care of this portion of the plan. But in retirement, as the paradigm shifts, this becomes paramount to maybe the most important aspect of a good plan in retirement, something that we really didn't have to think about during our working career.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely, Peter. And it's, how do we make our money last? And, a lot of people always were of the mindset of their parents and said, well, heck, we've got this money, we can invest it and live off of the interest. When CD rates were 7 to 12% back in the 80s, when you and I were kids, at least I was a kid. You might not even been around at that point.
Not that young, Chris.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember my parents talking about their double-digit mortgage rate, right? It was 14, 15%, something like that. But you could also get a 10, 12% CD at the bank. So it depends on what side of wealth you were on, right?
Correct. Yeah. If you didn't have a whole lot of debt, you were in pretty good shape there. And I think we need to be conditioned for interest rates that are going to be more, I'm going to call them normalized. I wouldn't call these high interest rates. This is more normal. A 5-year government bond isn't crazy. I think we need to get the longer term bonds, okay, 10, 20, and 30-year bonds paying a higher rate than the 2-year bonds. They call that yield inversion. We won't go into all those details. But, the bond market's trying to normalize itself where, if you invest in something for a longer time horizon, you're taking more risk. You should make more interest doing that in the bond market. And, we're in a kind of a seesaw battle right now as to if that's going to happen. And, so we have that side of the bond market there that still has some volatility with interest rates and, the burgeoning deficits that we're facing. And hopefully Congress, you're seeing the fight in the House of Representatives right now. A lot of that is about deficit spending, and some of the call them hardliners. I'm not going to call them radicals. They're finally saying, look, enough. We're not doing anything until you start addressing the deficit. And that's probably a good thing in the long run. It might look like, it's comical right now in the middle of all the conflicts, but hey, at some point you have to do something about it. I read this morning before you and I did the show, on Chairman Jerome Powell said, we are on an unsustainable path. This is the guy that runs the Federal Reserve. They do not dabble into fiscal policy. Okay. But, there's his monetary policy, the interest rate side of things. When they come out and say something like that, the people that spend the money need to listen to them. And I'm sorry to go on a rant about that, but it is time.
Yeah, no, but there is a big kind of conflict and battle between who's in charge there, right? Who's kind of in the driver's seat of monetary policy versus fiscal policy, and they sort of work to offset each other at certain points in time. You've printed too much money, we've spent too much, raise interest rates to stymie inflation. Well, we're seeing a market downturn, things are restrictive, lower interest rates to stimulate, and that's sort of the battle between the monetary policy and the fiscal policy, which we do need to be cognizant of and pay attention to. But Chris, these are things that are going to be those outside forces beyond our control, and why we need to control what we can and address each one of these 6 core issues. And again, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to see the report of the 6 core issues every plan should address, which covers is your plan goal aligned, income, investments, taxes, healthcare, legacy, those are the high level 6 issues that every retirement plan specifically should address and have in writing, but many, many questions within each one of those categories that you should be able to answer about your plan. If you'd like this report, pick up the phone, give a call to McIntire Retirement Services and Chris McIntire, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. Or if you'd like to get together to make sure that you can confidently answer each one of these questions between and underneath each one of these core issues, give a call and set up a time for that discussion, that complimentary review and retirement planning strategy session. Get your game plan for retirement put together and in writing, bringing together each one of the core issues in this list. Again, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194, or you can visit online, McIntireRetirementServices.com, McIntireRetirementServices.com. Chris, with income, specifically as we are transitioning to retirement, has the plan specifically been designed to cover expenses through retirement? Have you reviewed Social Security optimization strategies? Do you have a budget, income, expenses? Has taxation been reviewed? How and when will you access pensions, 401ks, IRAs? Are you exposed to sequence risk? Do you have that written income and spending plan? Do you have both an asset allocation and income allocation plan? So all of these questions and several more are within that list. Inflation, longevity, spousal income protection and replacement. There's a lot to think through, bottom line here, just with this core issue of income alone. And again, maybe one of the most paramount and important aspects of a retirement plan.
Yeah, absolutely, Peter. And, I'm holding up a book called Income Allocation, written by my buddy Dave Gaylor over there in Indianapolis. And Peter had mentioned the word income allocation. So I have my camera mounted up there so I have a better view of Peter. But yeah, David had written a book on income allocation as a complement to an investment strategy. So your investments allocation, may also need an income allocation element to it, depending on the size of the portfolio and everything that we are looking at, because we also need to deal with the inflation side of things. If interest rates are going to be higher, that means inflation is probably going to run a little bit higher here, and in the at least the short to mid range anyhow. Nobody really knows for sure. Things can change awfully quick. I don't believe, many of us, thought what we saw in the Middle East, what happened, with a couple of hundred terrorists, how the world can change and come on edge all of a sudden. So, a couple of boiling pots out there, the geopolitical risk, right, that threatens the oil market. That could certainly drive up the price of energy, which costs more money, to the people listening to the radio show to fill their gas tanks up, and things made out of oil, which is everything, right? And then essentially also, on the bird, I wanted to highlight this a little bit, as our deficit grows, does it weaken our currency, which drives up inflation as well, because it takes more money to buy other goods. Right? If the dollar is weaker, it takes, more money to buy something else. And that's what we have to watch. You've seen when you hear of a currency crisis, for example. I had a couple of clients ask me about that this week. That's why I wanted to bring that up. So maintaining a sustainable level of spending is so very important, looking at the amount of debt we have at the interest rate environment now, that we're going to start paying on it. It's not like we pay 5% on all 33 trillion, right? That's been laddered out over time, short-term, long-term. Some of that stuff, has to come due. But, those are some of the issues that we face in a rising interest rate environment. It's just not just mortgages, credit cards, student loans. It's what happens to the currency, the value of the dollar, if confidence weakens.
So many aspects that we need to be able to plan for, that we need to understand, that can impact our financial course and well-being. But again, those items that are outside of our control, we just need to have a plan in place that helps to protect or insulate us from those, and we need to control what we can. So again, these are the core issues that every plan must address. Is your plan aligned with your goals? Income, number 3 on the list, investments. Chris, since so much of our working career is focused on investments, I think let's skip over this one in our review, because that is one that I think we've had to deal with all along. Number 4 on the list, however, taxes. We may think during our working career that we have to deal with taxes, but in fact, working for a paycheck almost makes the taxes automatic in a large sense, and especially compared to what we have to deal with and plan out for managing taxes in retirement, right?
Absolutely. And, it's like inflation. If taxes go up, inflation is a stealth tax. It costs us more to do the same thing. If I go to the grocery store and it used to be $50 and now it's 75, right? That's a stealth tax. That's inflation. Okay. If they raise income taxes, and let's say this, at the end of 2025, right, the tax cuts that were put in place under the Trump administration are going to expire. So tax rates will revert back, and that's a tax increase, right? The 12% bracket becomes 15. That's a 3% increase on the money in that bracket.
The 3% increase, but that's actually a 25% higher bill, right?
Yeah.
Is that rate goes up 3%, but on those dollars, the bill on the tax is 25%. Makes planning for taxes right now maybe a pretty good opportunity, right, Chris?
That's right. Yeah, if you take 3% and divide it into 12, that's 25% increase in the money in that bracket there. Okay. And look at the deficits that are up and coming. Do you think there's a chance in heck those things are going to get renewed, or are they going to have the political fight to say, and the political will to say, look, we're going to let those taxes sunset and we're going to apply that money to the deficit or something like that, right? That would be the argument I would prepare myself for. So Roth conversions are so critical right now, maxing out HSA accounts, and all of those things. Your tax planning time frame might be shortening up here just a little bit, because we don't know what's going to happen at the end of 2025, and we have elections and things like that. But if you were the accountant for the United States government right now, okay, and it was your job to bring down the deficit, how would you do it? By cutting taxes or by raising taxes?
Yeah, I don't know, Chris. That's a 50-50 because we saw the trickle down effect helped to grow the economy, right? It widened the pool of economic activity, but I'm glad I'm not in charge of that decision, I would say.
Yep, and I'm on your side that as well. I guess my point, I'll elaborate on that, is government is just incredibly inefficient at what they do typically because it's a large bureaucratic piece and decision making. And then you add in the politics of it. It's like Social Security. They've not done anything to fix Social Security because it's a political football that nobody wants to touch, because if one side says one thing, the other side runs with it to try to scare people, right? Remember, they talked about privatizing it and they said, oh, you're going to steal grandma's Social Security benefit, and nothing got done. And the problem is still right there. Just the insanity of a big bureaucratic federal government. So anyway,
Chris, you have to deal with this in the planning with your individual clients day after day over the course of years, where the environment and the rhetoric and the laws in Washington may change dramatically over the course of time. But that is really where you take the reins and help clients to navigate the current environment and the potential changes into the future. And I think somebody who is working in the weeds of things day to day is what allows us, and saying us as a society and retired individuals hoping to live life to the fullest, to not have to worry so much about those things, to have a plan in place and to have a resource that's paying attention.
Absolutely. And that's why, we've been harping, before, when, in the previous administration, when we had mean tweets and $1.89 gas and no inflation, okay, they also cut taxes and we had record tax revenue that came in. So finding that balance where we're at, instead of just saying, hey, we're going to continue to spend massively amounts of money and we're going to tax the rich who pay the bill already. That's just the insanity. And yeah, it might make a good soundbite on the news channels, but the reality of it is crazy. 50% of Americans pay zero income tax. That might be part of the solution over the long haul.
Well, again, we are reviewing with Chris McIntire, Northwestern Ohio, your resource for a common sense approach to planning and to get your plan put together, to bring all of these core issues together into a written plan, your game plan for retirement. He is Chris McIntire, president and founder of McIntire Retirement Services. Today on the program, reviewing the resource, the report, 2-page report detailing the 6 core issues that every plan should address for a confident retirement. 6 core issues is your plan is goal aligned, goal oriented. That's number 1. And then from there, addressing income, investments, taxes, healthcare, and legacy. Many subtopics and categories beneath each one of those core issues that you need to review, that you need to see. If you'd like this report, pick up the phone, give a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. If you'd like to get your plan together to make sure that it addresses all of these issues, that's what Chris McIntire offers to you personally, individually, no cost, no obligation, for the review and complimentary strategy session. Again, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194, or you can go online, always available there at McIntireRetirementServices.com, McIntireRetirementServices.com. Chris, not enough time in the program to get to those final 2, but again, things that we don't necessarily think about as much during our working career: healthcare, legacy. We think about them, but not in the same way that we must address them in retirement. And that's why they are on this list, things that change dramatically that we need to address in that retirement plan for day-to-day living, confidence, and quality of life. That's why you've made this report available and made your time available, and we always appreciate when you do, Chris.
Hey, my pleasure. And sorry, I got some passion in there, obviously, and I'm a big fiscal responsibility person. That's all.
And unfortunately, we're just not seeing a whole lot of it, right, Chris?
Absolutely. It's easy to spend somebody else's money until they run out of it.
Yeah. Well, Chris, we appreciate the time. We appreciate the insight and the commentary, as always. And we appreciate the fact that you're there for proactive savers and investors as a resource to get that plan put together to complete the plan to address these 6 core issues. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, the number to call, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. Chris, have a great week.
Thanks. Thank you. Appreciate it, everybody. Go Bucks.
Tune into Chris McIntire's full radio program and visit McIntireRetirementServices.com for many additional valuable resources, including other great episodes of Game Plan for Retirement with Chris McIntire. Be sure to subscribe.
The content of this radio show is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. You are encouraged to seek investment, tax, or legal advice from an independent professional advisor. Any investments and/or investment strategies mentioned involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. Advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, a registered investment advisor.
Fiduciary duty extends solely to investment advisory advice and does not extend to other activities such as insurance or broker-dealer services. Advisory clients are charged a quarterly fee for assets under management, while insurance products pay a commission, which may result in a conflict of interest regarding compensation.